Smooth 98.1 Love Music, Love Life. I am Ayo Myro Essay. It's the 4th of June 2021. Time check 7:30 a.m. It's a very wet, rainy Friday morning here on the show. Well, especially in Lagos, especially for those who live in parts of Lagos State. I'm Ayo Myro Essay, and you're very welcome to today's edition of Freshly Pressed 981. Detailed analysis of the day's national news headline stories. And joining me to analyze the stories, I have Tunde Okufi. Good morning, Tunde.
Monayo. Good morning, Lagos.
Excellent. Tunde is at Big Coops on Twitter. We are at Smooth981 FM on Twitter. Use the hashtag freshly pressed 981. You can also send us a message on our WhatsApp platform, which is 0809 4440981, as well as streaming live on YouTube, youtube.com/smooth981 FM Lagos. Our first headline today, Constitution Review, CJN wants judiciary to have control over CCT. So the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Tanko Mohammed, has asked the National Assembly to amend the Nigerian Constitution to confer the powers of control over the Code of Conduct Tribunal on the National Judicial Council. What this simply means is that judiciary is now to exercise control over the CCT. In simple terms, at the moment, this responsibility lies with the presidency. So the presidency has control over the CCT. And what they said is that it doesn't allow them do their work effectively, and it's quite a bureaucratic process to enforce. Please take us through the story.
Yeah, so specifically, the Chief Justice says that the issues, one, have to do with being able to discipline members of the CCT if they were to be erring, and also that the process and procedure for removing them from office is cumbersome. Today, you'd need a two-third majority vote in the Senate to remove and sanction someone who has erred. So, I mean, if you look at that, I guess what the CGN is trying to forestall is a situation where there is where potentially members of the CCT and the Code of Conduct Bureau, CCB, can act with impunity, knowing that there's very little that can be done to replace them under the current laws. Now, but for me, potentially, I mean, the most important parts for me would be if we have a Code of Conduct Tribunal and a Code of Conduct Bureau. I still don't know why we have both. They seem very similar. That it would be beneficial if they're not directly under the presidency, right? But I mean, there can be arguments, for both sides. It depends on how mature your democracy is or governance is. Because I mean, if you're to look at other countries, if you look at the United States, you have the Department of Justice that is under the the presidency as well. But it's supposed to operate as an independent entity and authority as it has, although depending on presidency, as Trump showed, those long-held norms can be tested. So obviously, in an environment like ours that don't even have institutions or traditions as deeply rooted in democracy as other climes, then it probably does make more sense for an arm or a body or a committee that's meant to look at misconduct of public officers and officials not to be directly under the presidency. And I think for me that's the most important thing. This all speaks into the and I'm sure you will go into it, all the clamors for
Constitution review, and that's obviously and for good reason dominated news headlines. I'll then move on to the Guardian report on Senate saying that have said no as campaigners demand brand new constitution. So if they're saying no brand new constitution, the best we can get is an amendment of the constitution. So for all agitators for a totally new constitution to pave way for total reform of the country's ailing and comatose systems, your agitations might have just hit the rock. And this is according to the chairman of the Constitution Review Committee, OBA Omo Agege. In his Thursday declaration, noted that Section 9 of the Constitution had already foreclosed the new Constitution. He stated, some of our compatriots have urged that rather than amending the Constitution, we should make a new one altogether. We respect this opinion and we believe it is the most desirable proposition. However, we are conducting the exercise in accordance with the extant legal order, which is the 1999 Constitution, specifically Section 9 of the Constitution empowering the National Assembly to alter the provisions of the Constitution and prescribe the manner in which it is to be done. So what he's saying is that for everyone, and notable names have called for that. We have names like Peter Obi, we have Emafe Babalola, SAN, Shehu Sani, Ahmed Joda, Tanko Yakasai, who have called for a total overhaul of the constitution. What do you make of this? So they're just saying, don't forget about that. Let's just work on the amendment.
Yeah, so the 1999 constitution is so dangerous. It forestalls even it protects itself. It has mechanisms within it to protect and forestall any or forestall replacements. Look at there's a groundswell. So I mean, look at the first story. You know, people raising points to change the constitution for good reason. There's also obviously a groundswell in that it's become clear to many that the current arrangement is at best unfair, but potentially just doesn't work and is no longer, suitable and fit for purpose, and it's become glaring, day by day.
Yeah.
You can attempt a renovation, but if the foundation is not right or is wrong, you will continue to deal with the issues of a faulty building, and that's what many people are saying, that the foundations and fundamentals are wrong. Now, the 99 Constitution was designed and developed with a lot of military era oversight. Okay,
yeah.
It was in its wording, in its spirit, in many things. It was built to aggregate power in the center. Too much control is in the center, even though it's supposed to be constitution for a federation.
Yes.
Right. So the 99 Constitution is almost a contradiction to our name, or at least until they change it. This Federal Republic of Nigeria.
I wonder if we talked about this yesterday.
Republic, right?
Yeah, okay.
But the Constitution doesn't reflect that. Now, what we should have done, and what year on year, almost every election cycle, and now almost even between election cycles, is to replace that. So the 99 Constitution, we had to have something to get off the ground. Okay. But we've had more than enough time to look at and say, these are the ways we need to change.
Yeah.
Right. And everyone should be open to doing so. I mean, the Senate, the judiciary, they're saying what it is. How do I say it? They're saying what the law is. Like, okay, the constitution that we run, the laws on that, which we currently run this thing, protects itself from replacement.
Yeah.
But ultimately, the constitution itself was designed and developed for the people, right? The people shouldn't be a slave, shouldn't be slaves to the constitution. If it's faulty in its spirit, then I'm with those who clamor that we should change. The terms of the union, like I said, are best unfair.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. What they've said is that we can ask for an amendment, but not totally overhaul. Let's see how that plays out. I mean, something also notable he's mentioned.
Again, yes, you can amend, but the major argument around amendments is that it becomes very cumbersome, and then cumbersome to interpret.
Yeah.
So you can make amendments that will nullify certain parts, but then the interpretation just becomes so difficult, right? So, but if it's in, we can start with amendments. If a replacement is impossible, as they say, half bread is better than nothing.
All right. Thank you very much. Now, interesting story here from the Punch newspaper today. I'll be happy to get your thoughts on this. Corps members can be mobilized for war, says NYSC Director General. So the Director General of the National Youth Service Corps, Brigadier General Shuaibu Ibrahim, says Corps members are part of the national defense policy of Nigeria and therefore can be mobilized for war if need be. He said they are on reserve, and this is a direct quote from him in a television interview. They are part of the national defense policy of this country. So when there is serious war, our core members are educated. That's NYSC corpers are educated, they are knowledgeable, and they can be trained. Even, said you see the drill and so on. When I heard this story, the first thing that came to mind is that 3 weeks orientation that you prepare or mobilize young people for war? Are they equipped? He does make sense in terms of the fact that they are part of the defense policy of Nigeria. But if this is the thinking behind this, which I mean, if you look at the reason why the NYC was set up, this is not part of the reason. It was meant for integration, primarily. Would you say that if serious war, which we're not hoping for, praying for, happen in Nigeria, they can conscript youth corpers?
Yeah, that's the point. Let's hope that when we don't face war, because war is never a pretty thing. But to be honest, I don't know why this story is a bit of a surprise, and it's been generating, quite some debate.
Oh,
and conversation. It's no surprise to me. I mean, the NYC.
Were you aware? So let me ask.
Yes, I was aware.
Oh, you
It's
were
a
aware that you
paramilitary
could.
group,
All right, okay.
right? And it is part of. They are, like he says, they are on reserve. They're part of the national reserve, so to say.
Yeah.
And the reserve force is used in any country to defend the homeland in wartime, right? So say, for instance, you sent your best and brightest troops to the front line. You maintain a fort at home of reservists that can defend the homeland if it's, you for whatever reason, because you're stretched abroad, you're attacked. Reserve forces are typically manned by, can be manned by retired, officers, military officers. Goodness, in really bad times, it's been manned in some countries by women and children. To be fair, and you've seen, if you read the history of the World War, so why would it be a shock that young, because the youth was essentially the prime of the nation, they supposedly have had an education, so they're smarter than the average. Why is it surprising that they would, then they will form part of the reserve?
So I think,
defense.
so I think this speaks to
all the climbing and all the it's not for nothing. All that is to integrate the
so
nation. Those are secondary problems.
The first thing I see why there's an opera from his statements is the lack of information. Perhaps people were not aware. So we knew about the integration aspect of things, but didn't quite know that you don't know you're training for a paramilitary member.
If a serious one who had churches or soldiers, what do you think will be the first draft?
Youth corpers. They're already sent to the war front in quote during elections, aren't they?
Exactly.
And then but another part of it is that we talk about that sense of national pride, the willingness to lay down your life for your country. And we see this in many parts of the world. We read stories from, wars in the past. We see particularly in places like England and the United States, where people are proud to conscript, even against their family wishes. Now, the reason why you would have such an outcry, perhaps, is because people do not feel that sense of loyalty to country.
That's the question. Is Nigeria worth dying for? That's
all my story. That's what
is Nigeria worth dying for?
That's why they're like,
on current evidence, no, it's not. That's the truth.
So should be? We asked a question 2 weeks ago about the National Orientation Agency because this is part of their work. A national orientation is definitely needed amongst young people, older people. Let's even start with the young people because their minds are still fresh. We can still, teach them or engage them to have a sense of love and pride for their nation. Is it an impossible situation?
It's not impossible. We've been saying the same things, forever. These are the tales of my grandfather, and we still say them now. So it feels near impossible. There is so much wrath in the system that it's not beautifully crafted, slogans and jingles. There needs to be real and genuine, real weeping, and from all aspects of society.
Absolutely.
A lot of the time we talk about governance, but even people in their day-to-day in the private sector, there's a renewal that needs to happen in all of Nigeria. So.
All right. Thank you very much. Abayomi is of the opinion that we can only speak for ourselves, that some of them can die for Nigeria. Of course, Abayomi. That's why we open the conversation lines. You can send your message in. So it's great to know that Abayomi is willing to die for Nigeria. And that's what we're actually saying, that we should have that sense of loyalty and sense of hope in the nation. Tunde has his opinion. I have my opinion. You have yours. And so please share with us. Maybe that's the question of the day. Can you die for this nation? Would you be willing to die for Nigeria? And let's move on to our next story. There's something else he said there, which I would have like to ask you, but because of our time, I'll move on, which is the National Youth Trust Fund, which he said he had proposed, which is to give loans to corpers to start businesses after completing their mandatory program. What do you think of that?
Yeah, it's useful. In a country with little to no safety net, every little counts. You just put it in that group of category, trader money, all the other things that I do. So it's useful. It's let's not be cynical, because in the end, these funds are often just, are conduits to, further mismanagement and embezzlement. But it's not a bad idea to have a, one more social safety net to get, new graduates and young graduates, off the ground. It's not a bad idea in any case.
All right, thank you very much. Abidemi says the NYCDG is stating the obvious. The uproar is fueled by the timing. Talking about war resourcing after messages, that we've heard in recent times has significant meaning, and I guess that's why a number of people are like.
Actually reminds me of the very first one. That's precisely what I wanted to say. I'm less surprised it's because it's not new. I'm not surprised. I'm wondering why we're talking about it. It's just it's distracting.
Okay, so Modupe has a statement. It says, I will appreciate if you can reference what part of the law or constitution captures NYC as part of Nigeria's national defense policy. I couldn't find it anywhere. The objectives are clearly stated in Decree 51 of June 1993. The primary reason for the NYC was for integration after the Civil War. Even the first paragraph on the NYC website focuses on integration. Serious war? Is there anything like on serious war? Is it the 3 months of plain beagle that will prepare corpers for war? Coppers are also being advised by the DG not to move around at night. All right, good point there. Thank you very much, Modupe. So, is it safe to say, Modupe, that I know one of the people who are willing to lay down their lives for king and country?
Someone said slave mamas and slave papas are not going to. I'm not going to lay their lives down. We'll see.
Okay, so from Guardian newspaper, presidency says magazine article on Nigeria unfair. So what is the magazine article? It's from the Foreign Affairs, and it's titled, Foreign Affairs magazine, titled "The Giant of Africa is Failing." The presidency, through the senior special assistant to the president on media and publicity, has described as unfair and distorted opinion the latest article on Nigeria. He made the condemnation in a statement in Abuja yesterday while reacting to the article. So what do you think of this? Nigeria, failing giant? That's be patriotic Nigeria now.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, that's an issue, and you can see the internal struggle. Look, but the truth is the gaps and the failings are plain to see. It's obvious. Look at the current situation that we're in, and again, it's not new, right? But then for a time, it looked like there was hope, especially when they started speaking of, African, as in terms of economies, like strong economies in Africa and Nigeria being one of the forerunners of that. But in recent times, we've been hit by multiple things, and to cap that off. The pandemic and what situation do we have today, falling oil prices and a bunch of other things have led us down this path. But then you can't even just blame it on that. I mean, it is no one's fault but ours that we haven't diversified in government earning. We haven't focused on other sectors, and what we have is a lot of dilapidation. Where do we begin? Really, there's so much wrong. We have vehicles. We have vehicles on the road, but we don't have any capacity to produce tires to put on those vehicles. We need to import something as basic as that. It sounds like a mundane example, but that's just like the type of lack of planning that we have. We have taken off restrictions, and maybe that's why we have not been forced to look inwards, right? Everything we import, everything we bring from outside, right? We're a very dependent nation. Our income is dwindling, and therefore that tells on everything. I mean, to drive down today in the rain, the road, just 2 hours of rain, and everywhere is flooded.
Okay, so let's analyze things. So the reason why Nigeria was referred or is referred to as the giant of Africa is the big brother role it plays in Africa. So for instance, in terms of ECOMOG, security, we have offered at different times military support and personnel to other countries, in times of war. We're known as a trading nation as well. Our share number is enough for us to be regarded as such because, of course, with numbers, you have a population that's thriving, good for business. It's a population that's good for manpower, good for selling. And so you see these things and you can consider us as a big brother. If you look at at those things, are we still playing those roles? So that we're not sentimental about these things and it's just a reaction to, oh, we're still the giants of Africa. We hear of organizations who are moving their African,
exactly. So precisely, that's of all those things, what we have probably going for us now is our number. Our biggest resource still is our people.
Yes.
It's a huge, market here. There's a lot of trade that we pull. Unfortunately, a lot of it is still informal, but there's a lot of trade that goes through us with neighboring countries, right? That the AFTA agreement is even meant to improve that. But in terms of the big brother role, we did a lot with ECOMOG.
Yes.
In those times. Also, I mean, there are accusations of lots of atrocities, but at least there was a time that the Nigerian, army was well regarded in its peacekeeping capacity, at least in the African Union, right? And we've played those roles. In recent times, however, how long do you want? You need to be able to back your big brother up with, respect is earned. In a sense, it's not just conferred on you, and it's earned. It's being earned on the things that we've done in the past. But are we keeping that up?
Yeah.
Smaller nations seem more organized. Have a better economic plan. Look at Ghana. There's a reason why Ghana is attracting a lot more attention, at least foreign investment. People want to situate a HQ in Africa, and if they're not thinking SA now, they're thinking Ghana. Let's look at Rwanda as well. Rwanda has been through a much more, actually longer civil war than we did, right? And they've turned the corner, marvelously. So you just say you're the giants of Africa and your big brother without really backing it up. More and more.
You should consider the head of a family who has stopped taking on responsibility,
You become a basket case. That's what it is,
So on an optimistic note, could we regain, if we have lost it, that is, because that's still debatable, but could we possibly regain this role as giant of Africa, as big brother to African nations?
Oh, sure, we can. I mean, as badly as we slid, the truth is, I have this theory. I mean, so if you travel extensively in Africa, I have this theory that part of the reason why we are, well, the vast majority of the continent is still, Nigeria is still way ahead of large parts of the economy. So maybe I suspect that maybe that's why leaders, because I'm like, they're complaining, you can't see them, X, Y, and Z country, I don't want to call countries. But there are still only a handful of countries that we can point out and say, oh, on the continent, that they're doing, much better than ourselves. So it's not entirely lost. Our bragging rights are not entirely out of the window, but we're not acting and behaving well. And we need to get our house in order.
Absolutely.
We need to play the big brother role. Requires a lot, to back this. We did before, the peacekeeping talk, but now we're even struggling, stamping out an insurgency within our own borders, right? So then how, what credibility are you able to send a force, to some other country on the continent to help them keep the peace when you can't keep the peace at home? You also need to help, in strategy things, help with, economically, provide resources and other things to other nations. But we barely have enough ourselves. It's not all lost, but.
All right, I just wanted to, because Faruche had said the article mentioned the indices of a failed nation. In this report by I think we looked at the report from which paper now? I'm trying to look up the number of times on the show. And part of some of the indices of a failed nation include loss of control of its territory or of the monopoly on the legitimate use of physical force, erosion of legitimate authority to make collective decisions, inability to provide public services, inability to interact with other states as a full member of the international community, central government so weak or ineffective that it has an inability to raise tax or other support, and the likes. So some of those things that they didn't just make it claim or a statement, they actually backed it up with certain things. All right, let's look at other stories. We reduced kidnapping, banditry with NIN, says Pantami. So the Minister of Communication and Digital Economy, Dr. Issa Pantami, whilst rendering accounts of his stewardship since assuming office in 2019, has said that the policy compelling Nigerians to obtain the national identification number by the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari has substantially reduced incidents of banditry and kidnapping. Indeed, he said that it's been reduced to the barest minimum.
When public officers make statements like, you wonder which. Obviously, there are two Nigerias, and there's a parallel. There's one they live in, and then there's one everyone else lives in. It it has not been reduced significantly. Now, obviously, the registration of SIMs and NIN, we always knew would be an important part in not just fighting banditry, but criminality as a whole. It was an important thing, an important step to be able to help identify people and identify holders of or cell phones and and their location. So that is important. But again, another thing I don't think we can ever stop it is these sweeping statements that can't be qualified, are unqualified. So if he says that this exercise has reduced kidnapping and banditry, it should be more scientific. Give us data and information. Maybe perhaps along the lines of that X number of criminals or kidnappers were apprehended, and because we're able to trace their their SIM card, the SIM registration within the cells, we knew who those numbers belong to, and we're able to trace them and find them. That from data that or whatever other data we collect from them because of the NIN database, we're able to identify who they were. There should be data. You can't just come out and say substantially reduced. You say it's not even a very well crafted soundbite. To say that it's reduced is a bare minimum is also a bit insensitive considering where we are around this.
The next story we're talking about is on kidnapping. Interestingly, we'll come to that. But thank you very much, Olakule 70 says he's shown us section 3C of the National Youth Service Corps Act, and it reads: develop in the Nigerian youth the attitudes of mind acquired through shared experience and suitable training, which will make them more amenable to mobilization in the national interest. And of course, national interest would include home defense. Thank you very much, Daphne. Let's go on. Kidnappers of Islamic students threatening to increase ransom, says head teacher. This day newspaper reports. Suspected gunmen who kidnapped students of Islamia School Tegina in Niger State last Sunday are threatening to increase the 110 million naira ransom they have demanded for the release of the students if the money was not paid yesterday. And guess how this was made? This communication was done via telephone. I'm just going back to what the Minister of Communication had said. I think also another part I really found interesting today is that the head teacher, Mr. Abubakar Halassan, said that the state government has not reached out to them yet. They had abducted 150 students from a school in your state, and you haven't reached out to the head teacher. Is it that we've normalized these kinds of kidnapping or incidents?
Yeah, it's you also kind of take what the government is independent, to be honest. But I'm saying you sort of also borrow a leaf from the top. It's also the attitude. There are many things that happen nationally, and the question is asked why don't why is there no response from the presidency? Why does no one go? So it's again it's no surprise. Again, it's an executive governor. It's not like he's under him, but it's that sort of attitude in a sense. So yes, you can look at that. Having been normalized, we're normalizing it, but the truth is also culturally. Yes, we're in a democracy, but we can't separate it from our culture. To be honest, I don't think it's an attitude that we have towards. It's not necessarily in their mind. They're like, okay, so if I go and see them, how does it change the situation? So showing empathy and that solidarity is not really maybe something that's we're really big on. So there's it's neither here nor there. But you compare it against the story of the Minister of Communication that says it's to the barest minimum, and it has reduced. Let him say that to the parents and children of these kids, right? And the teachers, and they are communicating by mobile phone, by the way. So, where are we?
Thank you. Deepa says introducing NIN reduced kidnapping or banditry. Hello, no, but it reduced the exponential increase in kidnapping and banditry as the entry level into kidnapping became higher. So people are saying it's even gotten worse. And then Joseph is of the opinion that the minister is wrong. It's woefully and totally been a failure. And then Samuel from Lekki says the definition of a failed state is so accurate from Nigeria. And Tammy, does he know how many kidnap cases there are or never heard in the news? I think this is where we talk about data in our country. We don't just want sound bites, like you said today. We want facts, we want figures, we want numbers, we want names. We make these people real when we call names and we mention numbers, so that it's not just, we have increased, we have decreased. We don't want to hear stories like that. We want facts and I wish we could touch on the last two stories, but I'll just mention them as a headline and people can check them out. Nigerian university students raped, killed, according to police, premium times. And the reason why this is important is that this is one too many. You've had cases like this in recent times, and whether it's for ritual purposes, as some people have said, for just evil and crime, this needs to be looked into. And then finally, Lagos seizes 34 rams, vows to confiscate roaming goods, others, Punch newspaper. This, in maybe about a year ago, would have been a laughable headline.
No, so I think maybe you should just say that it's actually it's about illegal slaughterhouse, illegal slaughterhouse. No, I'm just thinking that you're just using your rams. And
you know what? It's in the article also
with
makes
food inflation
mention.
now, it's not even funny.
No, but the article also makes mention of the resolution of the Southwest governors about roaming. That's why it's become so important that they are arresting roaming goods and others. They're not arresting them. Yes, no open grave, confiscating them. And the good thing about it is that they gave them to, after testing that they were fit for consumption, gave them to to orphanages and charities. So I don't know. Maybe tell us what you think. Is it good or not so good? Thank you so much. Yeah, fair business. Thank you, Tunde. Always a good conversation with you. Tunde is at Big Hoops on Twitter. Find us at Smooth981FM on Twitter. Use the hashtag FreshlyPressed981. In a few minutes, Tega will be joining me for today's edition of Locker Room 981. Stay tuned.
The headlines. The stories.
Thank you, Tunde. They are arresting cows and goats.
In-depth analysis on national current affairs.
Oh my goodness.
Freshly pressed.
Have you ended it?